everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record today, which is The Great Escape by Blur. So this was actually a request I had by a user called Jamie Melling 92. So yes, thank you very much for requesting this video. I'll just be doing my usual thing, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So yeah, this was Blur's fourth studio album, released on the 11th of September in 1995, and probably came out at arguably Blur's sort of peak kind of like success like sort of time. Like they'd just released Park Life, which they were very much one of the two big acts of the era, along with of course Oasis. But probably kind of going into this album, it was Blur who had the slight edge over Oasis, having won 4 awards at the 1995 Brit Awards. I think those were in maybe March of that year, beating Oasis in all of the categories that they were both nominated in. So yeah, very much feeling of top of the world kind of thing. But I think personally within Blur there were some kind of difficulties emerging, the kind of feeling of tiredness and kind of weariness kind of growing in. The band members themselves were growing a bit more distant from one another. I mean, they had been together for quite a few years. They've been together at least 7 or 8 years before this album had come out, which is quite a long time. So yeah, they were kind of growing apart a little bit, and so consequently the album does explore various themes of loneliness and detachment, and just this kind of desire of wanting to try and escape from these. So recording the album started in early 1995 using their same producer, Stephen Street, who had worked with them on their last couple of albums. Very much kind of continuing down the same kind of tracks off those albums, very much Damon Albarn leaning into his kind of Ray Davies-esque kind of character studies, probably taking that probably pushing that as far as he could on this album, and kind of this is often referred to as the third piece in their Life trilogy of albums. So Modern Life is rubbish, Park Life, and then this one. And I think originally they were going to try and find a title with Life somewhere in it, but I think either time constraints or they just settled with The Great Escape in the end. So the album was preceded by the single Country House. Now this song has got a bit of a notorious reputation because it was essentially Blur's entry into this kind of media frenzy, the battle of Britpop, where basically Oasis and Blur both released songs on the same day, and we're very much again a chart battle to get the number one spot. Now from this it would be Blur who would emerge victorious with Country House getting to number one and outselling Oasis's role with it. Now I must say, I mean, both of those songs are far from the band's best work, but it certainly got them even more kind of mainstream recognition and attention. So by the time it came to this album being released, they kind of had they were as I said at the peak of their kind of their success and critical acclaim, with this album receiving pretty much unanimous acclaim when it was released with Select magazine calling it funny, brave and heartbreaking album, and that it has everything that you could want, with The Enemy saying that it is utterly beyond contemporary compare. So these were kind of super off the charts kind of critical reception to this. But very 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 quickly, I think a matter of weeks maybe after it came out, kind of sentiment started to sour. I think that was partly due to Oasis, who I think a couple of weeks after released their album What's the Story Morning Glory, and there was just this feeling of maybe it was just a bit overhyped when it first came out, and it actually on reflection maybe wasn't quite as good as people were kind of making it out to be. You had kind of magazines I think publishing apology pieces saying yeah, we got it wrong, sorry, it's not as good as we were kind of making it out to be. And I think kind of by the time 1996 came along, I think Blur's kind of image off the time of being this Britpop band had kind of was kind of yesterday's news a little bit, and it's kind of no wonder that they would kind of want to go in a sort of different direction for the next album. It's an album which I don't think the band look look back on very fondly. I think it was quite a frustrating record for Graham Coxon, who was wanting to explore different musical styles, and like Albon has described it like retrospectively as messy and one of the two bad records that he's made during his career, the other one being their debut album Leisure. So in terms of commercial success, this album was, when it was like initially released, was probably what you call like a massive hit album. You know, it had sales like of 500,000 copies like in like its first month, straight in like at number 1. However, I think once that kind of like that backlash kind of started to kick in, like a little bit, sales would soon drop off, and like and like unlike Parklife, which had been a bit more like off a slow burner, like off an album, this one was a kind of flash in the pan kind of success sort of thing, and like it's ended up like not selling like as many copies like as Parklife did. Okay, so I'll now show you my vinyl copy of the album here. So this is the reissue of it, unfortunately. I think all my Blurred albums are reissues, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah, it's a nice cover though. I do always like the cover like off like this album, and then this back cover here where they all look kind of like professional, kind of like office worker kind of like attire going on there, and then the inside just as this kind of slightly random dolphin like on like the inside there. I don't think originals were gatefolds. I'm not 100% sure, and just in the usual Blur style, you've got the inner sleeves here which all have the lyrics and the guitar chords on them as well, which is a nice touch. I think the other inner sleeve looks very, very similar, and this is just on a black vinyl with sort of custom labels there. So yeah, that is the vinyl record looked at. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. I'll score each track out of 10 and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. There must be more to life. All your life you're dreaming. So the record kicks off with the song Stereotypes, which is a rocking opening track. It's a song which I think, lyrically is basically about like wife swapping kind of thing. He sort of sings like on it, she's been feeling frisky since her husband said goodbye. She wears a low-cut t-shirt, runs a little B&B. She's most accommodating when she's in her lingerie. Got this is one of the singles from the album like as well. It came out here like in like a nice sort of like picture sleeve with a kind of wife swapping kind of like application form like on like the back of it there, and it's on a lovely pink vinyl as well. The single got to number 7 on the charts, but a bit of a forgotten Blur hit, this one here, but I really like it. I think it's the music though what does it more for me with this song. I think Coxon's guitar is just so up front and such a powerful part like off like the track, but I just like the chords on it as well, that like the bit where it goes like I know your life you're dreaming, and then you stop dreaming bit. I think the chords and you've got this kind of keyboard or organ going on in there. I think that sounds really, really awesome and just very satisfying. So yeah, it's a good song this to kick off the album Stereotypes. Lives in a house, very big house in the country. Okay, next one up on the album is Country House. So yeah, like I've already touched on this song a little bit, but yeah, basically the lead-off single for the album the date of it moved to sort of coincide like with like the Oasis song Roll With It. Although far from my favourite Blur song, I think it has grown on me like a little bit, like I would say. I think it suits being this early on like on the album. I think if this had come kind of sort of towards the end, you'd maybe be a bit sort of fed up, but I think, by this point the album's still quite vibrant, and yeah, you're up for like a track like this. I mean, lyrically, this is a song very much out of like kind of like the Ray Davies kind of playbook, bearing sort of striking similarities to the Kinks song like House in the Country from the Face to Face album, but this song I think inspired by a manager like of Blur's who basically just upped sticks and moved to a very, very big house like in like the country, but on this track, the character study becomes a lot more kind of it's a guy who is rather sad and kind of like depressed. He sings like he takes all manner of pills and piles up analyst bills in the country. So it combines this very overly chirpy kind of musical backing with these slightly more depressing and sort of slightly more mysterious kind of lyrics about a kind of sort of darker sort of character, and that, which even then when you get like the bridge on this as well, which is a slight change in tempo, becomes a bit quite kind of whimsical, that oh I am so sad I don't know why kind of thing. It feels whimsical. It feels like we shouldn't have a lot of sympathy for this character or sort of like take kind of pettiness or like sort of like embrace like kind of like the self-pettiness like off like this guy like too seriously. I mean, it is a song which divides people, A lot of people hate this song like with a passion, but I don't mind it. I still wouldn't say it's one of my favourite Blur songs or one of my favourite singles of theirs, but I don't mind it, and I think it is that combination of happy music and slightly more like sort of like darker lyrics, which I think work really well, like, and keep it like somewhat interesting. So yeah, Country House for me would get an 8 out of 10. Okay, next one up is called The Best Days. Now this one is a bit more of like a slower ballad, this one here, with lyrics kind of talking about people's relationship, I guess, with like nostalgia and kind of like over romanticizing kind of like the days like of like your youth. So quite vivid lines on this about a kind of contrast sort of between sort of like there's like he talks about sort of workers sort of leaving London like out into leafy nowhere, hope someone's waiting out there for them, he sings, and then this kind of like what's happening like in the city, which is these kind of like like young people living it up, kind of like getting drunk kind of thing, like in Soho. So it's quite a melancholic kind of ballad, this one here, piano heavy like arrangement, which kind of takes to the fore like in like the solo like of this one. I just feel this song would almost have worked a lot better like as a kind of not quite a closer, but more it feels more like a wrapping up kind of song. Like I always thought that this was the closer like off the album for some reason, or like just like kind of think it would have suited kind of coming towards the back end like of the album like a little bit more. But it's a good song though, and yeah, I would give it an 8 out of 10 overall. Okay, the next one up is Charmless Man. Now this one is another great song, I think, and this was another single from the album, reached number 5 on the UK charts. Now apparently, the title of this Albon found sort of graffitied like in like the toilets like of like a train station, but he then kind of turns it into another one of his kind of classic kind of character studies about this kind of uptight and like overprivileged guy. Like he moves in circles of friends who just pretend that they like him. He does the same to them. So it's a very like unpleasant man he's kind of singing about, but very great arrangement though I think on it. Very poppy like in style, very exciting, vibrant sounding backing vocals, which really make the song which really like power the song along. I like the kind of stop-start nature like off like the music like as well. It kind of it sounds like the kind of introduction's like full on, but then everything drops out for kind of like the verse and like that. I think it just works really well. Definitely one of their most underrated singles there for me. Okay, the next one up is called Fade Away. Now this one is a kind of sort of reggae, sort of ska kind of like infused sort of song. It's got very kind of droopy brass on it, and kind of everything's kind of punctuated like on like the offbeat kind of thing. Some great dynamic bass playing from Alex James on it, like as well. And lyrically, again, another kind of not quite a specific character study, but certainly talking about a kind of couple just sort of going through the motions, not living their life. He sings like they stumbled into their lives. In a vague way, became man and wife. The one got the other. They deserved one another. They settled into a brand new town. It's arguably, like you could say, it's kind of a bit of a metaphor for kind of Blur, like at the time, this kind of just going through the motions kind of stage sort of thing, not really living, not really thinking about what's best for you, just kind of settling into this kind of like monotony. I must say I'm not crazy about the song. I think the chorus is a bit weak. It's a bit repetitive. Like all you want to do is fade away. They repeat that quite a lot, but I do quite like the verses. I think are quite good, and I like the way Albon sings them. They're quite deadpan sort of style. So no, Fade Away is pretty good track. A 7 out of 10 for me. Okay, next one up is called Topman. Now this one is a slightly low-key like acoustic number. This one, quite again, we've kind of taken the energy down like a bit like on the album with these two songs, but this one's very prominent, kind of deep, kind of sounding backing vocals on it. Reminds me a bit of Funboy 3. You've got lyrics which sort of reference the UK high street sort of clothing chain, Topman, and how a guy who kind of shops there sort of thinks he's the coolest hipster going, but sort of like there's a great line they call it, like in a crowd crowd, it's hard to spot him, but anonymity can cost. And it's just this, about this desire to sort of be cool and stand out and have all the latest sort of trends, and that doesn't mean a jolt when everyone's kind of doing it, sort of thing. I mean, I think it's I think it's alright. I'm saying, like, I give it a 6 out of 10. I'm not crazy about the chorus. I think like that spelling out that Topman chorus just doesn't work for me. It just goes on too long. It's very repetitive. It just gets into this kind of groove, and it just, it would be a lot more effective if it was a kind of 2.5 minute track. As it is, I think it's about 3.5 minutes, and it just doesn't. I think it just like outstays its welcome like a little bit. This one. Okay, next up is the Universal. Now this one is a out-and-out Blur classic, this one. I mean, it dates back a few years. Well, I'll say this was attempted during the Parklife sessions as a kind of ska kind of number, but I don't think anyone's ever heard that version, or certainly, like, I've never come across it, and, you know, I dread to think like what it actually sounds like, but they kind of abandoned that and then kind of revisited it on here as this kind of lush ballad with a gorgeous kind of string section on it. It's a song which is quite multi-layered, I'd say. On the surface, comes across as quite a kind of optimistic, kind of crowd-raising song. You know, like, yes, it really, really, really could happen. Like, sort of like quite, like optimistic. But then, kind of like, apparently the lyrics are actually about a kind of like a dystopian future where basically everyone gets prescribed this drug called the Universal in order to sort of ease their stress and sort of convince them that the world is fine and there's nothing to worry about and that. So it's a great song. It has gone down, rightly so, I think, like as a Blur classic. It's just got a very classy like arrangement on it, and I think that works wonders. So the Universal for me would get a 10 out of 10. Okay, next one for me is probably the weakest on the album. It's Mr. Robinson's Quanger. Now this one just feels very disjointed like as a song for me. It is a rocker, but it's also a bit sluggish as well, and then it's just in terms of its structure just doesn't really lead like anywhere. It's quite a ferocious kind of verse, but then there's no chorus to it. It basically just leads you like up a hill, and then there's no payoff basically like to it. Again, this is another character study with the lyrics describing a rather like unpleasant businessman or politician. He sings like he's a self-processed saver of the dim right wing. He's got respiratory problems and a mason's ring, he sings. And then there's this kind of ending line about like, I'm a naughty, naughty boy. And it's just not a song like I particularly care about or think is like worth really like returning to. I just think that is, but the character studies, they kind of like run like their course like a little bit, but on this one I just feel like they're just going through the motions musically, and it just doesn't work for me personally. So one of my least favourite Blur songs, like, in fact. Okay, next one up on the album is He Thought of Cars, and this one is a slower, more kind of atmospheric song, this one here. Lyrically, apparently, like about a future where sort of like a lottery winner has won the moon, but despite all these kind of like innovations and sort of like a kind of sort of feeling of kind of like people like attaining things like that, like they want kind of thing, like on like beyond like their dreams. The character like in this song still feels very lonely. He says like he thought of cars and where to drive them and who to drive them with, but there was no one. It's quite a heavy listen, this one here, full of kind of like melancholic very, very melancholic sort of song, and again, just the way Albon sings out that chorus, very deadpan, and you've got Coxon doing some crazy stuff like on guitars. For me, it just feels a little bit like a repeat of This Is a Low from Parklife, but nowhere near like as good. I think kind of like, it's like, certainly the verses on this song remind me a lot more of that, because it's kind of got this kind of travelogue kind of like lyrics to it, sort of talking about, I think there's references Moscow and a few other places. He mentions, Moscow's still red. Talks about the motorways will all merge soon. The space invaders come to save us. All that kind of stuff. Panic at London Heathrow mentions on it. Very, very similar to the kind of shipping forecast references you get like on like This Is a Low, but nowhere near like as strong of a song, like I would say. But it's still good, and I would give it an 8 out of 10. Okay, next up is called It Could Be You. Now, this one is an upbeat song, this one here, very much kind of classic Blur sort of territory, you know, very similar to things like Tracy Jacks or London Loves from like their previous albums. And yeah, it's got this kind of, sort of quite sort of like harsh, kind of sort of snappy guitars like on it. Reminds me a bit of XTC's Respectable Street kind of thing. So certainly not covering new ground for Blur, but lyrically quite good, I'd say. You know, about kind of talk about like the national lottery and how everyone thinks that winning it is a kind of instant ticket to like eternal happiness, but it kind of actually isn't, kind of thing, and that, and sort of like you're not going to just become happy by sort of getting loads of like money, kind of thing. It's certainly one of the more accessible moments like on the album. I think it would have made quite a strong single. I think it might have been a single like in some territories, but no, it's a good song, this one here. Keeps the energy up like on like this latter half like of the album. So yeah, we'll give it a 9 out of 10.
An old same train, same station.
Okay, and the next one up is called Arnold S. Now, this one here features narration by then MP and future Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. Not because the band were particular admirers of his, but because he's got a very kind of nasally, kind of whiny voice, which they sort of thought would fit in with the narration they wanted to go along like with this and the kind of vibe like off like the track. And I think it actually like is a match made in heaven, this, you know, like Livingstone's kind of sort of like delivery like off this song here just really works well. Like considering like what the song's about, which is just this guy, the same routine again and again and again, sort of like day in day out kind of thing. But at the same time, it is very fillery, this song, like as well. I just kind of think, particularly when Albon comes in and starts singing, I just think if they just left it with the narration, I think it would have worked a lot better. But they do try and turn it into like an actual song, and I just don't think it works like as that. So yeah, we'll give it a 6 out of 10 overall for Arnold Sane. Okay, and I went into the last side of my like double vinyl reissue version of the album here, which with a song called Globalone. Now, this one is quite an abrasive, kind of punky sounding track. This one here, again, this is a song which like some quite good lyrics that once like you delve into them, talking about a guy who's sort of obsessed with like the latest sort of trends and sort of like things he's seen like on like commercials and like advertisement. So again, just mentioned those kind of things, very similar to themes they had explored like on like Modern Life is Rubbish, like on like the track Advert there. He sings on this one like he is because he saw it on a commercial break. He doesn't get what he wants. If he doesn't get what he wants, he gets a headache because he needs it, wants it, almost loves it. So it's this kind of just this kind of consumerism gone mad kind of sort of like song this one here. So not really covering new ground for Blur. I enjoy it when it's on. I wouldn't skip it when it's on, but yeah, it's just not a particularly remarkable song. So yeah, we'll give it a 7 out of 10. Okay, next up is called Dan Abnormal. Now, this is a song which Albon wrote basically like about himself. He said it's sort of like Dan Abnormal, like it's like an anagram of Damon Albarn, and it's a kind of it sort of concerns the kind of trappings of fame and this kind of feeling that he's sort of living like a double life, and everyone sort of has sort of quite high like expectations of him. Like when like they meet him, he sings like "Meanie Leanie, come on down, come and entertain the town. It's Friday night and we're all bored." But then the actual like the guy like in like the song like is actually just a regular guy and just sort of is like at home watching TV and sort of dreaming and sort of like asleep kind of thing. Like because Dan is just like you and me, like he sings later on. For me, musically, it's just quite forgettable though. I mean, like I get what he's going for like with the lyrics. I think they're quite good. Quite creative lyrics, but I just don't think that they've really teamed it with a good melody, and it just is a bit forgettable. So we'll give that one a 7 out of 10 overall. And next up is called Entertain Me, and again this is another song where the lyrics I think are a lot stronger than the song itself actually is. This one is about kind of dating and how kind of like relation and and like how relationships can kind of become like commodified. He sings like at his and hers dating, bored minds agree, requirements to be stated, replies awaited. She wants a loose fit, he wants an instant whip. Guesstimates her arrival, will she want it really badly? Like he sings on it, and it's quite futuristic, like in some ways, considering, you know, this was still some like 20 years before you get like online dating apps becoming kind of popular and that. And I think it's kind of, when you listen to the song, you know, you can almost just sort of not quite take in these lyrics, just because Damon does sound quite bored on them again, sort of thing, and just the whole song just has a feeling of a band sort of losing energy, like a little bit, which I suppose works and is quite well paired to the message, like off like the song about, yeah, this bored repetitiveness kind of thing coming in, about kind of, yeah, just this loss of passion, and passion again, like excitement kind of thing, to the thing that like, yeah, like, I mean, like we all sort of should like find like exciting, sort of like dating and sort of like relationships and that. It's just a song which, yeah, I just again wouldn't skip it, but I just think it struggles to reach the heights like off like their earlier two albums.
These are the people I work with, Yuko.
And the final track now is called Yuko and Hero. Now this one is quite a low-key closer on the album, but it's one I rather like. It's a track about, yeah, basically these two factory workers, Yuko and Hiro, who are basically, yeah, I think they're like Japanese, like sort of like factory workers, and they're basically just getting worked to death kind of thing. Like, you know, like it's talking about sort of them working incredibly long hours. They're not sort of seeing like their loved ones, like these are the people now that the narrator sort of spends like all like his kind of like his time with, like as opposed to like his actual family. So it's quite a bleak kind of closer, like, you know, just this sense of, yeah, being worked to death, like kind of thing. But I think I think the lyrics are quite powerful, and music is like quite like a nice like accompaniment to them. So it's a good song, this one here. Again, not an exciting track, not a kind of epic way to close the album, just quite a low-key closer, which I think works quite well. So yeah, that one will get an 8 out of 10. Okay, so overall this album would score 77%. So I do think this is a good album. Like, you know, like it's not there's some great material on here. Stereotypes, Charmless Man, The Universal, like He Thought of Cosmic is good, It Could Be You. Like, there's like some really good stuff like on like this album. I just think it was a sensible point, I think, for Blur to change gear. I think they needed to move on from this kind of sort of writing style. I think the kind of character studies and sort of like even just the music in this kind of style, like, you know, was becoming a little bit tiresome, and they were just feeling a little bit boxed in, and that definitely comes through like on this album, particularly towards the latter half of it. It definitely suffers from the 90s syndrome of just packing too much material. So 15 tracks on here. I think if they'd made it a really tight 10-12 track album, it would have worked wonders for this record, and probably would not be as divisive an album as it actually is, because I think it is just one of these things they just tried to pack like too much like onto it. And yeah, like as I said, I think kind of, yeah, like the change of gear, like they would go under like for like their next album, the self-titled album, which I must say, you know, like kind of like I personally do start to lose interest like in Blur beyond this point. I think it's what they needed like as a band in order to keep themselves relevant and to keep themselves like innovating and interested like in working together. Because if they made another album like this, I think it probably would have been the end of them, like to like be honest with you. But no, decent record. Not gonna say like it's my favourite Blur album. I think probably their first 3 albums are probably all stronger than it. I would say. I do think Leisure like is quite underrated like in places, but yeah, there's still no getting away from it. There are some Stone Cold classics on here that is definitely worth a listen if you have not tried it and you are a fan of theirs, or a fan of Britpop 90s indie music like in general. So yeah, that's becomes the end of this review. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.
Where the universe is free.